What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another week of the Unstoppable Dad Project podcast. As always, just take some time to make sure that you've followed us on socials, you've subscribed to whatever podcast platform it is that you're listening to this on. We also release video versions of the podcast on YouTube as well too. So if you prefer the video version, you can jump on there and you can see that. But by you jumping on and liking and supporting the things that we have out there, because I do this for free to try and put hopefully some good information out there, if nothing else, for people just to listen to, get some ideas and get some insight into my life, my thoughts, and hopefully that helps. But we do this for free and we need your support to help grow it. So like, share, subscribe, do all the things that you need to do on the internet to try and share this around and help us grow this thing, as well as show us support on the Facebook and the Instagram page. But this week, as you can probably tell by the title, I've titled this "Two Ears, One Mouth, Use Them in the Appropriate Ratio." And I guess you could relate this to parenting. You could relate it to a lot of things, but one of the underlying themes that we always talk about when it comes to being in a dark spot, which I think everyone's been there, it's just to varying degrees, is about reaching out for help and talking to somebody. And we may be on the other end of that, where somebody has reached out for help to us. And one thing in my life that I've obviously put a bit of a premium on and a bit of an emphasis on, especially over the last 10 years as a coach, is communication. But before I was a coach, I was in sales. I was in business to business sales. And I had a boss who was a mentor. This was when I was early 20s. And he used to have a line when you were in a sales meeting, and he used to say, "You have two ears and one mouth, use them in that ratio." And the reason he said that is because all too often, and I see this all the time, and I'm super guilty of it, but if somebody's talking to us, we are sometimes, to try and make our experience more relatable to them, we're trying to interject and think about what we're going to say. And sometimes we can get caught. And as I said, I am probably the most guilty person when it comes to it. Like, I'm an over explainer. One of the reasons why I do this podcast is so I can kind of get some of that out. But we, all too often, we tend to feel like, or I tend to feel like, and I notice this with a lot of people, we feel like in order to help, we want to talk more. And probably in reality, if we take a step back and we put ourselves on the other side of it, and we're the person asking for help, we almost want to be talking more than the person that we're talking to, because we've got stuff that we want to get off our chest. We want to feel like we're heard. And when it came to, like, my old mentor and my old boss saying that within the sales context, what he was talking about was basically, like, you want to ask, when you're talking to somebody in a sales setting, you want to ask open-ended questions and prompt them to talk more than you are, to try and get the information out of them. And from, like, a sales point of view, that makes it easier to close the sales. The more information you have on the person, the better you can help them. And it's the same from a coaching perspective. All too often, I think, especially as a new coach, one thing that I would do would be talk too much, because I'd get this information and I would just, like, verbally spew all this information at the person, whereas they didn't really want to know all the information and the nuances between why we're squatting with our knees this way or why we're doing this particular exercise. They just wanted to know how it pertained to them. And knowing that, and knowing that's how I react, and kind of looping it back to, I guess, what this podcast is about, and perhaps how it pertains to you, is if you are on the opposite end of it. And I know I've gotten a lot of messages and things like that from people who listen to the podcast. And I know that there are a lot of you that have been through some pretty tough times, and you have hopefully found some value out of what we've done. But I think when we start to put out there that we're having a tough time of things, people automatically want to share with us their experience. And if we're the one that's going through it, I know for a fact that, like, if I'm talking to somebody, sometimes I just want to talk and I just want to be heard. I don't want them interjecting with their stories, even though, to digress for a second, I do believe that some people, like a lot of people, when they try and talk, and they do try and talk more when they're trying to help us, firstly, it's that maybe they don't understand what we're trying to get out of the exchange or the interaction, but they are telling us their story because they want to try and relate to us that they understand from their own perspective. So it's not that, I don't think anybody's ever angry with this, but this is just something to bear in mind when you are having a conversation with somebody who's maybe asking for help. You really want to listen to what's going on. And a couple of things that I know from a communication standpoint that I do particularly, and I've tried to curb myself doing, is rather than let them talk and let them go through what they need to, and instead of trying to think of how I'm going to respond or what I'm going to say as they're talking, like, take some time. It's okay for there to be a little bit of a dead space while you kind of think, because if it is somebody that's coming to you for help, maybe, you know, they're obviously comfortable with you. So thinking about how you're going to respond to certain things after they've said it rather than how they're saying it can be a really good tool to try and, understand what they're going through more. And yes, sometimes it's helpful to relay stories, especially if it's a very similar situation to what they've been through. I mean, that is a lot of what this is about. It's about my personal experience, this particular podcast, my personal experience, the things that I've gone through, and potentially the things that I've done to get myself out of those situations. But one of the previous episodes that I have done on this podcast is, like, you never understand, you don't understand, and you never will. And the fact is, it doesn't matter how relatable you think the story is, you're never going to truly understand what somebody else is going through, because you're not going to have the same feelings and emotions and everything wrapped up about how they're responding to a particular time or a particular incident or object or whatever the case might be. While it might be similar, it's never ever going to truly be the same. And listening more can help you understand a little bit more about what that person is going through. For me, when it comes to coaching, rather than trying to talk more than the person that I'm coaching, I need to work quite hard on listening to them and trying to hear what they're saying. And sometimes it means, yes, I do have to potentially talk more than what they are. But what I try and do is get it in a concise manner so that it's easily digestible for them. But if they ask me a question and I get the start of the question and I don't get the context for the rest of it, all too often what will happen is I will give them more information than they will need, and they will actually miss the core information that they need to take on board because I've given them too much. So from the point of view of listening to friends and, being there for people, which when somebody does, try and talk a lot, it might be that you're uncomfortable in the situation. And if that's the case, all I would do would be try and support the person and tell them that, like, you are here for them to help, and potentially encourage them to go talk to a professional. Because again, this is an underlying theme with a lot of the, for lack of a better term, mental health episodes that we've done, where you want to make sure that you don't need to be the sole source of that person's help. There are professionals out there that do that for a living that are there to help you. And it's just something, but sometimes we just need to vent. Sometimes we just need to get shit off our chest so that we can get rid of it, and then we can get on with it. And doing that with friends and things like that is what we should be doing. Like, we should be opening up more to each other. We should be talking to each other more. And most importantly, we should be listening to each other more. And that's, I guess, the point of the conversation, and the point of this particular podcast is that I know I get caught out on it. I've observed a lot of other people getting caught out on it. And sometimes less is more. Sometimes not saying as much is going to be more helpful to somebody, because really what they need is they just need to be able to vent. They just need to be able to get it out. And by them getting it out, it sometimes helps them processing it, because especially for us blokes, us dads, sometimes we won't have the opportunity to talk to somebody about things for weeks and weeks and weeks. And what we actually need is just like 10, 15 minutes with a good mate where we're just like, and we just bang, we just let it out. And as we're talking about it, like we're processing it at the same time. And if you're the person on the opposite side of that who's listening and you're constantly interjecting, you're almost not allowing them the opportunity to do that. So I guess to finish off, the message for this quick 10-minute podcast is, while it is always important for you to look after yourself and ask for help, one thing I've found is once you start putting it out there, you will have people on the other side of it that will come to you to want to talk to you about what they're going through. And if you're comfortable doing that, listen. Sometimes listening is the best thing you can do for somebody. I know I've got a lot of good friends who I've had some great conversations with, who have just listened to what I've had to say. And that's all I've needed in that particular instance. There's other times where we've had to talk to other people, and that's okay. Like if you need help, if it is all getting too much for you, as always, like reach out to a professional and seek that help. But if somebody's trying to talk to you, listen to what they have to say, because like my old mentor used to say, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that ratio. Hopefully you've enjoyed that little ramble on listening. Let me know what your thoughts are. Drop a line, a comment below if you're on the socials with this post. Start up a conversation in the Facebook group for those of you dads that are in there. We've got a Facebook group, The Unstoppable Dads. Get in there, engage, pop some, let us know what you're struggling with. Let us know what your wins are. Jump in there and engage with each other. And, let's start a community of dads around Australia and around the world who are there to support and lift each other up. So that's it for this week. Enjoy your week, and I will see you next week. Bye.